Over the past year, we've unearthed some major rip-offs and some minor rip-offs, and we've come to our own conclusions about who are the really dishonest groups in our society. But we were more interested to find out who you, the public, felt were the greatest rip-off merchants in New Zealand. We put that question to a number of unsuspecting passers-by in the street.
But I can tell you that the most dishonest people, I think, are council workers.
My own personal opinion is that accountants and lawyers.
In the Motor Vehicle Disputes Tribunal MVD 156/2021, NZ MVDT 164 between Siobhan Kelly applicant and Universal Imports 1998 Limited respondent members of Tribunal Brett Carter, Barrister Adjudicator S. Haynes, assessor hearing at Auckland on 1 and July 28. 2021 appearances S. Kelly, applicant Ella Sullivan, witness for the applicant APEC, for the respondent date of decision September 3, 2021. Decision of the tribunal. Siobhan Kelly's application to reject the vehicle is upheld. Ms. Kelly's rights and obligations under the Collateral Credit Agreement with Finance Now Limited dated February 4, 2021 are assigned to Universal Imports 1998 Limited from the date of this decision. See Universal Imports 1998 Limited shall, within 10 working days of the date of this decision, pay $3,304.24 to Ms. Kelly. 2 reasons. Introduction. 1. Siobhan Kelly purchased a 2003 Audi Allroad for $8,999 from Universal Imports 1998 Limited on February 4, 2021. Ms. Kelly says that the vehicle developed a fault that made it hard to start within 2 weeks of purchase and that an extensive list of other faults has since been found. Ms. Kelly has applied to the tribunal seeking to reject the vehicle and recover the purchase price, together with costs she has incurred, as she considers that the vehicle has not been of acceptable quality and that Universal Imports engaged in misleading conduct. 2. Universal Imports says that Ms. Kelly should not be entitled to any remedy. It denies misleading Ms. Kelly and says that it has rectified the defects that it should have liability for, and any outstanding faults are due to the ordinary wear and tear or the manner in which Ms. Kelly has used the vehicle. Relevant background. Pre-purchase representations. 3. Ms. Kelly purchased the vehicle on February 4, 2021. When the vehicle's odometer reading was 184,493 kilometers. She says that she was told by 2 representatives of Universal Imports, including Andrew Peck, a director of the company, that the vehicle was a great car. The trade-in, as part payment of the purchase price, Ms. Kelly traded in her Toyota Ist for $2,000. Ms. Kelly raised a concern that the trade-in was not included in the sale and purchase agreement. She is correct, as the vehicle offer and sale agreement signed by both parties makes no mention of a trade-in vehicle. However, Ms. Kelly has suffered no loss as a result because the value of the trade-in vehicle was effectively treated as a cash deposit. The vehicle offer and sale agreement states that Ms. Kelly paid a deposit of $2,000. Ms. Kelly did not pay a cash deposit. Instead, the trade-in value was treated as a deposit to purchase the vehicle, so the trade-in vehicle did form part of the sale and purchase agreement. 3. The warranty. 5. Ms. Kelly also raised concerns that she had asked for a warranty with the vehicle, but none has been provided. I note that Ms. Kelly was never charged for a warranty and the vehicle offer and sale agreement contains no mention of any warranty, other than the guarantees in the Consumer Guarantees Act 1993, being provided with the vehicle. I am therefore satisfied that Universal Imports had not agreed to provide any extended warranty to Ms. Kelly as part of this transaction. The The vehicle's defects: the fuel pump and speed sensor faults. 6. The vehicle broke down on February 19, 2021 due to a fuel pump fault. Ms. Kelly contacted Universal Imports, which arranged to have the vehicle transported for inspection and repair by Automotive Anarchy Limited. Ms. Kelly was provided with a courtesy vehicle, which she considered unsuitable. Ms. Kelly says that she was told that the inspection and repair would take a few days, but the repair took 5 days and she was unhappy with the communication she received from Universal Imports during that time. Universal Imports says that the repair was delayed because its repairer initially installed the wrong fuel pump and it had to source and install the correct replacement. 7. Almost immediately after Ms. Kelly collected the vehicle, it broke down again. Ms. Kelly says that she contacted Universal Imports and tried to reject the vehicle. She says that Universal Imports refused to accept her rejection and proceeded to repair the vehicle. Ms. Kelly says that she did not authorize this repair. She says that Universal Imports refused to provide her with details of its assessment or repairs and refused her request to have the vehicle assessed by a mechanic of her choice. Says that Universal Imports simply sent her a photograph of a diagnostic scan result which said no fault codes found. 8. On March 2, 2021, Ms. Kelly advised Universal Imports that she wanted to collect the vehicle and have it assessed by her chosen mechanic. She says that Universal Imports ignored this request and ignored a letter sent on her behalf by the Waitakere Community Law Centre on March 10, 2021. Ms. Kelly says that Universal Imports then delivered the repaired vehicle to her on March 15, 2021. 9. Andrew Peck, who appeared for Universal Imports, says that it was trying to rectify the fault, which was difficult to diagnose. He says that Universal Imports mechanics performed a diagnostic scan and could find no fault codes and that no 4 fault codes were found until March 2. Automotive Anarchy Limited then found a fault with the vehicle's speed sensor, which it replaced. Universal Imports was charged $714.75 by Automotive Anarchy Limited for rectifying the fuel pump and speed sensor faults. Mr. Peck says that the vehicle was returned to Ms. Kelly once it had been repaired and once Universal Imports was satisfied that the fault had been fixed. The Cook European inspection. 10. Ms. Kelly remained unhappy with the vehicle. So on March 24, 2021, when the vehicle's odometer reading was 186,253 kilometers, she had it assessed by Cook European Limited, which carried out a pre-purchase inspection. A tax invoice of March 24, 2021 states, the vehicle had a long cranking time on startup, possibly due to a faulty fuel pump non-return valve or fuel pressure regulator. It considered further diagnosis was required. An exhaust temperature sensor was faulty. The vehicle had a fault code in its event history relating to a worn and overheating air suspension compressor. The left wiper blade was not contacting the windscreen. The driver's sun visor, number plates and rear sun roller blinds were loose. The driver's side storage pocket was broken. The coolant was weak and the wrong antifreeze had been used. There were various oil seepages and leaks, but the engine needed stripping to determine the severity of those leaks. The cam bolt looks aged. The transmission oil is dirty. The left outer CV boot is leaking. The bonnet gas stay is weak. 5. The rear brake pads and rotors require replacement. It considered that the rear rotors were discolored and rusting and that the rear brake performance was weak. There is surface rust on suspension and drivetrain components. The gearbox tail shaft housing seal needs replacing. A turbo oil return pipe seal is leaking. The front tires have worn unevenly and may need replacing. The right front CV joint is worn and clicks when turning right. The driver's door hinge needs adjusting. The service light is on. The dashboard skin is coming away from its base. 11. Cook European estimated that these alleged defects would cost between $8,000 and $11,000 to rectify. On March 31, 2021, Ms. Kelly again contacted Universal Imports and attempted to reject the vehicle. She then filed this claim with the tribunal. The Carologist Limited and Automotive Anarchy Limited inspections, 12. The tribunal first heard this claim on July 1, 2021. Universal Imports was concerned that it had not been given a further opportunity to assess the vehicle to determine the true nature and extent of any defects. The tribunal also considered that the report from Cook European contained insufficient detail to enable it to draw firm conclusions on the nature, extent and cause of the vehicle's alleged defects. The tribunal therefore adjourned that hearing to allow the vehicle's alleged defects to be further assessed. 13. Ms. Kelly then had the vehicle assessed by Carologist Limited. In an email dated July 7, 2021, Carologist says that it inspected the vehicle and considered the driver's door would not open, which it considered to be a warrant of fitness failure. The coolant. 6. There was an oil leak from the bell housing area and valve cover gaskets. The transmission may be leaking oil. The power steering was leaking oil and was below the low mark. The drive belt looked worn out. The transmission had errors in it. It considers that the vehicle has a bad mechatronics system and doesn't know what gear it is in, which it considers to be due to a lack of servicing. The left CV boot was torn. The drive shaft seal needs to be replaced. The passenger side sway bar link needs to be replaced as there was metal-on-metal contact. The turbo oil return line was leaking. The vehicle had a long crank on start-up. The vehicle had a faulty oxygen sensor. The airbag suspension had an overheating fault. The Automotive Anarchy Limited inspection, 14, on July 15, 2021, by which time its odometer reading was 191,178 kilometers. Universal Imports then had the vehicle assessed by its mechanic Automotive Anarchy Limited, which considered the vehicle was in good condition for its age and mileage. The front sway bar link bushes were worn. There was a minor oil leak from the rocker cover gaskets and front differential right side axle seal, which it considered to be typical for the vehicle's age and mileage. It inspected the suspension airbag system and could find no obvious fault. It considered that the stored fault code relating to the airbag. 7. Suspension may have been caused by another workshop not locking out the airbag system when raising the vehicle on a hoist. That the oil level was overfilled, and the vehicle showed no sign of burning or consuming an excessive amount of oil. The driver's door opened without issue. The vehicle started without issue. The transmission changed gears smoothly. The vehicle drove great. 15. Given the conflicting evidence as to the existence and extent of the vehicle's defects, the tribunal asked Ms. Kelly to bring the vehicle to the rescheduled hearing on July 29, 2021 to enable the tribunal to assess and test drive the vehicle. On July 28, 2021, Ms. Kelly advised that water had leaked into the front passenger footwell. The morning of the hearing, Ms. Kelly then advised that the vehicle would not start, so she could not bring the vehicle to be assessed by the tribunal. Ms. Kelly also says that the vehicle's hazard lights and indicators are also turning on unexpectedly. The assessor's inspection, 16. After the hearing, I asked Mr. Haynes, the tribunal's assessor, to assess and test drive the vehicle, which he did on the afternoon of July the 29th, 2021. Representatives of both parties were present during that inspection and test drive. Relevantly, Mr. Haynes considered that the water leak was caused by debris blocking a drain in the battery compartment. The hazard lights, front indicators and interior lights were on permanently. Those electrical issues lessened after the vehicle had been driven, which led Mr. Haynes to conclude that these issues may have been caused by the battery not being fully charged. The suspension airbag warning light was illuminated, and the airbag suspension could not be adjusted. 8. The driver's door was difficult to open as the door striker was out of alignment. The vehicle's front tires were worn on the edges, possibly due to a wheel alignment issue. The vehicle started and drove well, without any obvious sign of engine or transmission faults, although a clicking noise could be heard from the right front of the vehicle, consistent with a faulty CV joint, and a knocking noise could be heard from the front suspension. 17. Ms. Kelly has responded to Mr. Haynes' assessment. She says that Mr. Haynes' assessment, which she characterized as a visual assessment and quick test drive, did not satisfactorily explore the substantial issues, being the transmission power steering, cam belt, alignment, brakes, that she has experienced and that she believes to have been uncovered by two independent mechanics and their diagnostic equipment. 18. Relevant to Mr. Haynes' assessment, Ms. Kelly also considers that Mr. Peck misled the tribunal by claiming that Universal Imports put new tires on the vehicle at the time of sale, because the condition of the tires at the time of Mr. Haynes' inspection show that the tires were not new. The debris in the drain plug that caused the water leak must have been pre-existing, because the carologist assessment shows that the vehicle was not properly maintained before Ms. Kelly purchased it, and there were not trees or other such catalysts near where the vehicle was parked that could have caused the debris to accumulate during her ownership. The vehicle's battery is still not charging properly, and the vehicle remains difficult to start. 19. Universal Imports was also given a chance to respond to Mr. Haynes' inspection report. It considered that the report seemed fair. 9. The issues. 20. Against this background, the issues requiring the tribunal in this case are: has the vehicle been of acceptable quality for the purposes of S6 of the Consumer Guarantees Act 1993, the CGA? B. Did Universal Imports fail to rectify the vehicle's defects within a reasonable time? C. Are the vehicle's defects a failure of a substantial character? D. What remedy is Ms. Kelly entitled to under the CGA? E. Has Universal Imports engaged in misleading conduct in breach of S9 of the Fair Trading Act 1986, the FTA? Issue 1. Has the vehicle been of acceptable quality? 21. Section 6 of the CGA imposes on suppliers and manufacturers of consumer goods a guarantee that the goods are of acceptable quality. Section 2 of the CGA defines goods as including vehicles. 22. The expression acceptable quality is defined in S7 as follows. 7. Meaning of acceptable quality. 1. For the purposes of Section 6, goods are of acceptable quality if they are as a. Fit for all the purposes for which goods of the type in question are commonly supplied, and b. acceptable in appearance and finish, and c. free from minor defects, and d. safe, and e. durable, as a reasonable consumer fully acquainted with the state and condition of the goods, including any hidden defects, would regard as acceptable, having regard to f. the nature of the goods, g. the price, where relevant, h. Any statements made about the goods on any packaging or label on the goods, h. The nature of the supplier and the context in which the supplier supplies the goods, I. Any representation made about the goods by the supplier or the manufacturer, j. All other relevant circumstances of the supply of the goods. 10.23. In considering whether or not goods meet the guarantee of acceptable quality, the tribunal must consider the quality elements as set out in S7. 1. A. E. of the CGA as modified by the factors set out in S7. 1. F. J. from the perspective of a reasonable consumer. 24. The purchaser of an $8,999, 18-year-old Audi Allroad with an odometer reading exceeding 184,000 kilometers should have realistic expectations as to its quality and durability and should understand that the vehicle is likely to have pre-existing defects consistent with its age and mileage and that the vehicle will require regular, and sometimes expensive, ongoing maintenance. 25. In that regard, many of the vehicle's alleged defects do not breach the guarantee of acceptable quality because they are consistent with the vehicle's age and mileage and either do not require repair or are the type of maintenance cost that a reasonable consumer can expect to incur. For example, a. The various oil and fluid leaks all appear minor and consistent with the type of leak or seepage that one would expect to see in a European vehicle of this age and mileage, and b. Items such as the worn cam bolt, weak bonnet stay gas strut, dirty transmission oil, service light, weak coolant, wiper blades and faulty oxygen sensor are all maintenance items and service costs that the purchaser of a vehicle of this age and mileage can expect to incur. 26. However, despite the conflicting evidence presented by the parties as to the existence of the various alleged defects, I am satisfied that the evidence shows that the vehicle also has, or has had, defects with its fuel pump sender, speed sensor, right front CV joint, front suspension components, driver's door and airbag suspension that mean it has not been of acceptable quality for the purposes of S6 of the CGA. 27. The fuel pump sender and speed sensor faults, which occurred shortly after purchase, breached the guarantee of acceptable quality. A reasonable consumer would not expect such faults, which made the vehicle unusable, to be present so shortly after purchase. 28. Likewise, the worn right front CV joint, knocking noise from the front suspension, misaligned driver's door and airbag suspension fault are not defects that a reasonable consumer would consider acceptable, even in a vehicle of this age and mileage. Each of those defects, except the knocking noise from the 11 suspension, was identified by Cook European on March 24, 2021, less than 2 months after purchase, by which time Ms. Kelly had driven less than 1,800 kilometers in the vehicle and were present when Mr. Haynes assessed the vehicle. 29. Mr. Haynes advises that the right front CV joint is noisy, which is a sign of failure, and requires replacement, and there is a knocking noise from the front suspension, most likely caused by a worn sway bar link bush that also requires replacement. The front door is also hard to open, which is a warrant of fitness failure 1, and the airbag suspension does not work. Those defects mean the vehicle was not of acceptable quality for the purposes of S6 of the CGA because the vehicle was not as free of minor defects or as durable as a reasonable consumer would consider acceptable. 30. With respect to the airbag suspension fault, Universal Imports submitted that this may have been caused by carologist failing to lock out the airbag suspension when it raised the vehicle on a hoist. Mr. Peck says that he spoke with a representative from carologist, who advised that it had failed to lock the suspension out as it should have. Mr. Haynes agrees with Mr. Peck's submission that a failure to lock out the airbag suspension in this way can lead to damage. However, I am not satisfied that carologist has caused the suspension fault in this vehicle. Cook European had found a fault code relating to the vehicle's airbag suspension compressor well before this vehicle was assessed by carologist, leading me to conclude that it is likely that the vehicle already had an airbag suspension fault before it was assessed by carologist and that carologist did not cause that fault. Issue 2. Did Universal Imports fail to rectify the vehicle's defects within a reasonable time? 31. Ms. Kelly says that she initially rejected the vehicle because Universal Imports took too long to rectify the fuel pump and speed sensor faults. Under S18, 2b, 2 of the CGA, Ms. Kelly will be entitled to reject the vehicle if Universal Import failed to rectify the defects that breached the guarantee of acceptable quality within a reasonable time of being required to do so. 32. Section 18 provides 18 options against suppliers where goods do not comply with guarantees. 1C in Service Certification, WOF and COF, Vehicle Inspections Requirements Manual for General Vehicles, Part 6 to 1-9. 12. 1. Where a consumer has a right of redress against the supplier in accordance with this part in respect of the failure of any goods to comply with a guarantee, the consumer may exercise the following remedies. 2. Where the failure can be remedied, the consumer may a. Require the supplier to remedy the failure within a reasonable time in accordance with Section 19. Where a supplier who has been required to remedy a failure refuses or neglects to do so, or does not succeed in doing so within a reasonable time, I. Have the failure remedied elsewhere and obtain from the supplier all reasonable costs incurred in having the failure remedied, or 2. Subject to Section 20, reject the goods in accordance with Section 22. 3. Where the failure cannot be remedied or is of a substantial character within the meaning of Section 21, the consumer may a. Subject to Section 20, reject the goods in accordance with Section 22, or b. Obtain from the supplier damages in compensation for any reduction in value of the goods below the price paid or payable by the consumer for the goods. 4. In addition to the remedies set out in subsection 2 and subsection 3, the consumer may obtain from the supplier damages for any loss or damage to the consumer resulting from the failure, other than loss or damage through reduction in value of the goods, which was reasonably foreseeable as liable to result from the failure. 33. I am not satisfied that Universal Imports took too long to rectify the fuel pump and speed sensor faults. The fuel pump fault took 5 days to rectify, which is not unreasonable. Certainly, the repair could have been completed more quickly, but a 5-day turnaround is still acceptable. Ms. Kelly was also told that the repair would take a few days. 5 days is within what a reasonable consumer would consider a few days. 34. Likewise, I am not satisfied that the speed sensor repair was unreasonably delayed. I accept Universal Imports' evidence that the fault was difficult to initially diagnose, as noted in the invoice from Automotive Anarchy Limited, and that it rectified the defect once it was diagnosed. I also note that Ms. Kelly was provided with a courtesy car throughout, meaning any inconvenience caused by the time taken to repair the vehicle was mitigated. Issue 3. Are the vehicle's defects a failure of a substantial character? E5. Under S18, 3, of the CGA, Ms. Kelly may reject the vehicle if its defects amount to a failure of a substantial character. A failure of a substantial character is defined in S21 of the CGA. 1321 Failure of substantial character for the purposes of Section 18. 3. A failure to comply with a guarantee is of a substantial character in any case where a. The goods would not have been acquired by a reasonable consumer fully acquainted with the nature and extent of the failure, or b. The goods depart in one or more significant respects from the description by which they were supplied, or where they were supplied by reference to a sample or demonstration model, from the sample or demonstration model, or c. The goods are substantially unfit for a purpose for which goods of the type in question are commonly supplied, or, where Section 8(1) applies, the goods are unfit for a particular purpose made known to the supplier or represented by the supplier to be a purpose for which the goods would be fit, and the goods cannot easily and within a reasonable time be remedied to make them fit for such purpose, or d. The goods are not of acceptable quality within the meaning of Section 7 because they are unsafe. 36. Section 21 of the CGA applies to this case, and although none of the defects that breach the guarantee of acceptable quality are a failure of a substantial character in its own right, I am satisfied that the vehicle's accumulated defects are a failure of a substantial character for the purposes of S21 of the CGA. 37. In Cooper v. Ashley and Johnson Motors Limited, the District Court found that a purchaser may reject a vehicle where there has been an accumulation of defects that amount to a failure of a substantial character, even when those defects may not amount to a failure of substantial character in their own right too. The court noted that a point will eventually be reached where the purchaser could say convincingly that he or she had no confidence in the reliability of the vehicle. 38. Although a reasonable consumer can expect an $8,999, 18-year-old high-mileage Audi Allroad to have defects consistent with that price, age and mileage, the accumulated defects in this vehicle are more significant than can be considered acceptable and are such that a reasonable consumer would not have purchased this vehicle if he or she had known of the true nature and extent of those accumulated defects. Likewise, the number and combination of those defects is also such that a reasonable consumer would by now have reached the point where he or she could convincingly say that they have no confidence in the reliability of this vehicle. 2 Cooper v. Ashley and Johnson Motors Limited, 1996, 7 TCLR 407, DC 3 at 417. 14 Issue 4. What remedy is Ms. Kelly entitled to under the CGA? 39. The relevant remedies are contained in S18 of the CGA, set out above. For the reasons also set out above, Ms. Kelly is entitled to reject the vehicle because its cumulative defects are a failure of a substantial character. Ms. Kelly is therefore entitled to recover all amounts she has paid, and all consideration provided, in respect of the vehicle, for which in this case is, a. $2,000 the deposit Ms. Kelly paid when agreeing to purchase the vehicle, through the trade-in of her Toyota Ist, and, b. $1,043.32 being all payments of principal made by Ms. Kelly under the loan she entered into with Finance Now Limited on February 4, 2021 to purchase the vehicle, the collateral credit agreement, less all interest charges accrued before March 31, 2021, which is the date she rejected the vehicle. 40. In allowing Ms. Kelly's rejection of the vehicle, I acknowledge that she has now owned this vehicle for about 7 months and has traveled approximately 6,700 kilometers in that time. If the vehicle's defects had arisen now, it is unlikely that Ms. Kelly would have been entitled to reject the vehicle. However, the defects arose many months ago and Ms. Kelly attempted to reject the vehicle in March 2021. By which time she had driven less than 1,800 kilometers, but Universal Imports declined to accept that rejection or to accept the return of the vehicle. It was reasonable for Ms. Kelly to then continue to use the vehicle until this matter was determined, so I do not consider that Ms. Kelly's continued use of the vehicle affects her right to reject it. 41. Under S18. 4. Of the CGA, Ms. Kelly is also entitled to recover other loss or damage resulting from the vehicle's defects. Ms. Kelly incurred the following costs in diagnosing the vehicle's defects: which were all a reasonably foreseeable consequence of the vehicle's defects. A. $195.50 the cost of the diagnosis from Cook European on March 24, 2021, and B. $65.42 being the cost of Uber fares to and from Cook European. 42. Ms. Kelly is also entitled to have her ongoing rights and obligations under the Collateral Credit Agreement assigned to Universal Imports. The relevant for Consumer Guarantees Act 1993, S23, 1a. 15 provisions are set out in SS 89, 2, and 3, of the Motor Vehicle Sales Act 2003, the MVSA, which state, 89 Jurisdiction of Disputes Tribunal. 2. A disputes tribunal may order that the rights and obligations of the buyer of a motor vehicle under a collateral credit agreement vest in a motor vehicle trader if a. The collateral credit agreement is associated with the contract for the sale of that motor vehicle, and b. The motor vehicle trader is a party to that contract for sale, and c. Either one of the following circumstances applies. I. The buyer exercises the right conferred by the Consumer Guarantees Act 1993 to reject that motor vehicle and, on a claim by the buyer under Section 47, 1, of that Act, the Disputes Tribunal orders the motor vehicle trader to refund any money paid, or other consideration provided, for that motor vehicle, or 2. The Disputes Tribunal finds that the buyer has suffered, or is likely to suffer, loss or damage by the conduct of the motor vehicle trader that constitutes, or would constitute, any of the conduct referred to in Section 43, 1, of the Fair Trading Act 1986 and the Disputes Tribunal makes an order under Section 43, 2, of that Act declaring the whole or any part of the contract for sale to be void. 3. For the purposes of subsection 2, collateral credit agreement, in relation to a contract for the sale of a motor vehicle, means a contract or agreement arranged or procured by the motor vehicle trader or the buyer for the provision of credit by a person other than by the motor vehicle trader to enable the buyer to pay the price reserved by the contract for sale in respect of the motor vehicle. 43. The criteria in S89, 2, of the MVSA for the assignment of rights and obligations under a collateral credit agreement to Universal Imports are all met in this case. A. The agreement between Ms. Kelly and Finance Now Limited is a collateral credit agreement for the purposes of S89, 2, of the MVSA. The agreement was arranged or procured by Ms. Kelly for the provision of credit by Finance Now Limited to enable Ms. Kelly to purchase the vehicle. B. Universal Imports sold the vehicle to Ms. Kelly, so it is a party to the contract to purchase the vehicle, and 16. C. Ms. Kelly has exercised the right conferred by the CGA to reject the vehicle and the tribunal has ordered that Universal Imports must refund any money paid, or other consideration provided, for that vehicle. 44. Accordingly, under S89, 2, of the MVSA, all of Ms. Kelly's rights and obligations under the collateral credit agreement are assigned to Universal Imports from the date of this decision. Issue 5. Has Universal Imports engaged in conduct that breached S9 of the FTA? 45. Section 9 of the FTA provides, 9. Misleading and deceptive conduct. Generally no person shall, in trade, engage in conduct that is misleading or deceptive or is likely to mislead or deceive. 46. The test for establishing a breach of S9 was set out by the Supreme Court in Red Eagle Corp Limited v. Ellis. 5. The question to be answered in relation to S9 is whether a reasonable person in the claimant's situation, that is, with the characteristics known to the defendant or of which the defendant ought to have been aware, would likely have been misled or deceived. If so, a breach of S9 has been established. 47. Ms. Kelly alleged that Universal Imports engaged in misleading conduct correct by describing the vehicle as a great car. Under S9 of the FTA, such statements of opinion will only be misleading if that opinion was not honestly held and based on reasonable grounds. 648. Mr. Peck advised that Universal Imports genuinely believed that the vehicle was in good condition for its age and mileage and that it had recently passed a warrant of fitness inspection. I accept that evidence, and in the absence of any evidence to show that Universal Imports should have known about the defects that have subsequently arisen, although this vehicle has since had defects that breach the guarantee of acceptable quality under S6 of the CGA, Universal Imports has not engaged in misleading conduct in breach of S9 of the FTA by expressing that honestly held opinion. 5. Red Eagle Corp Limited v. Ellis, 2010, NZSC 20, 2010, 2 NZLR 492 at 28. 6. Premium Real Estate Limited v. Stevens, 2008, 12 TCLR 133 at 54. 1749. Ms. Kelly also alleged that Universal Imports breached the FTA by advising her in late February or early March 2021 that it had assessed the vehicle and could find no faults and that no fault codes were found after a diagnostic scan. That claim must fail, as the evidence shows that Universal Imports did assess the vehicle and performed a diagnostic scan and could find no faults or fault codes. It subsequently performed further diagnosis, during which fault codes relating to the vehicle's speed sensor were identified. 50. I am therefore satisfied that Universal Imports has not engaged in misleading conduct in breach of S9 of the FTA. Outcome: 51. Ms. Kelly's application to reject the vehicle is allowed and the tribunal orders that a. Ms. Kelly's rights and obligations under the Collateral Credit Agreement with Finance Now Limited dated February 4, 2021 are assigned to Universal Imports 1998 Limited from the date of this decision. B. Universal Imports shall, within 10 working days of the date of this decision, pay $3,304.24 to Ms. Kelly, and C. Ms. Kelly must then make the vehicle available to be collected by Universal Imports. Dated at Auckland this 3rd day of September 2021. B.R. Carter, adjudicator.
Wow, I've met a few, but that is a complete Richard right there.
Well, it's a Richard this time, Hayden, but how do you know whether you can trust them? We're going to keep up the pressure on this because there seems to be a relatively easy fix.